Sounds good.
All right, so I see your hand raised, and I don't know, I came in late. So, Catherine, were you negotiating do you want to approach the floor,
Well,
Ken, or?
yes, please.
Okay, so let's see.
Just a minute or so.
Okay, no problem. I think that,
Um,
give me 1 second here to just do something. So this, yeah, because we have everybody, because Val can't make the meeting tonight, so everyone is here. So I think we will start, and I apologize for the late start. At any rate, so sure, Ken, go ahead.
well, I just lost everything again. I just lost everything. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, nothing's changed on our end. You're good.
All right. Well, I just a couple of things. As you're going over things, you're sometimes you know this thing in and out. I don't, and a lot of people don't. So I don't. Nobody else has come in anyway. But if you can remember to say, well, we're working on page, looking at page 28, whatever. That would be helpful. Whether it be now or at a public hearing or whatever. Not that you needed to do it at a public hearing, but the people that were speaking should have said, I'm talking about page 28 or whatever. And then I got messed up one time when Val was talking about, I believe it was, let me just look in the plan real quick. I think it was either 38 or 39 that page. And I wondered if that says it's assessment actions from 2006 comprehensive plan. Now, are those actually part of this plan? Or do they have to, if it is appropriate, do some of these things have to be added to the plan on a different page? And then I've seen where several people, not a lot, from Speedsville seem to be disappointed that they feel like they've been left out. I don't know how to take care of that, and I wondered if when you make all the changes you're going to make, will the planning board have another public hearing and have this out soon enough to go over, and if not, and it goes to the town board, will the revised copy that the town board gets be passed out? I'm done, and I don't know if you can answer any of my questions.
Yeah, we can. I can. So, so briefly, in terms of will the planning board have another hearing? No, we had the one hearing. We're working revisions, but the town board will have another hearing. And yes, the draft of that will be made available. The details of that are up to the town board, but they will make that draft available to the public, for review for some period of time before they have the public hearing. And a couple other things I do. So, and this is crucial. When you say several people in Speedsville feel like they've been left out, I mean that's critical. Like we tried hard to reach out to all corners of the town, and in particular, I believe on the Speedsville Commons, for example, there was a sign put up about the comprehensive plan. And I think at least one place in the plan, someone said, oh, Speedsville should be mentioned there. And that would be totally an oversight, because they are mentioned several places in the plan, because that's important. They're one of the hamlets and stuff. So what I want to understand is when someone in Speedsville says they feel like they've been left out, I want to understand what sort of what that is. Should they somehow feature more prominently in the plan? Do they feel like we didn't do enough advertising to let them know about the plan? So there's different ways to take that comment. So do you have a sense of what it is that the concern is?
I'm sorry to say I don't. I've seen it just in a couple of the comments that were sent in. I mentioned it in one, I forget what page. I'll get it real quick here. Page IV. where it says there's green space and sprawl in the hamlets of Brooktondale and Sladeville Springs. That's probably one thing that they're mentioning, that they're a hamlet too.
Yes, no, that's a good point. So I think we just need to look through and look for misses there. And we did talk about that at the last meeting, I think. Then, and we also
Okay.
did talk, yeah, and so then, you know, again, excellent point. So, and we did talk about at the last meeting, there has been some confusion over that appendix, which is like the pages 38, 39 you were talking about. And so we'll be adding, you know, my understanding from where we left off last meetings, we're gonna add some clarification there. That appendix is simply a summary of key action items from the original plan and some assessment of what happened or didn't happen in the years between then and now. So the action items listed there are not necessarily, in my view, they are not part of this plan unless they've been incorporated in the main text as action items in one of the three major sections. I think there is, you know, there have been several people, I think, that took it the other way. And so I think our decision last time was to add some language to clarify that. So I'm willing to hear from, you know, Charles and Catherine, but my view is things mentioned in that particular appendix are not action items for this plan. The only recommended goals and action items for this plan are the ones that appear at the end of the livability, environmental protection, and rural character sections. Is that how you guys understand it as well?
Well, for me, I started reading these things on 37, 38, 39, and I thought, well, some of this is really great, and I must have read things 3 or 4 times until I understood the appendix heading there, and wait a minute, oh, these aren't in the plan. Maybe some of them should be. That's from my point of view. Some of them are pretty good, and if they hadn't been
right.
accomplished, maybe we need to try.
Okay, good point. And
Well, I
agreed.
appreciate you answering my questions.
No worries there. All right, anything else either one of you guys wants to say to Ken before we move on to the rest of the meeting?
I guess, I mean, you've already kind of asked about it, but I mean, I would just really welcome, if not now, Ken, if at another time you feel more comfortable sharing the Speedsville concern, like I would just offer some curiosity around that and, you know, openness to hearing that, since that's kind of my neck of the woods, actually. So I'm being interested to hear, you know, what the story is there. If, you know, like I say, if not now, at some other time.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I second that. Obviously, it's great. And I'm going to mute you, Ken, and unraise your hand. And if there comes a time during the meeting where you do want to say something again, you can raise your hand up. Great. Thank you. And all right. Okay. What was I going to think about? I don't remember now. Oh, a couple things. Because I'll forget this if we don't do it now. So, you know, we are definitely getting there on the comprehensive plan. We are 4 members, and Charles, I know you're sort of hanging in there. I don't know if you're going to go through December or just whenever we finish the comp plan. We need a couple more members for the planning board. And I think that what I would like over the next few weeks, if each of us could think of like 2 or 3 people that we know that should maybe receive an invitation to say, hey, please apply to some vacancies, because the town board has tried, you know, they post notices on the town website, but I just think it doesn't get seen. And I think it's going to take a little more bit of a personal touch to get some folks, you know, to apply. And I'd like to make a real push, because we're about to launch. You know, it's been reasonable not to add new people at the ending stage of this here, because it'll just muck up the works, but I really, really need a couple more bodies to help us in our work and decision making. So please think over your friends and other contacts Then we'll, I just want to make a plan to concretely, like a few weeks from now, each of us can send out an email inviting people to apply to the planning board. And I think, Tim, probably everyone on the task force is a reasonable person to send a note to. I have a hope that if someone gets like a personal note, sort of from someone they know, that they're more likely to act on it and apply.
Since the task force is meeting weekly, I would be very surprised if anybody from the task force would join the planning board right now, which was actually my concern from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, but I could well imagine
they don't do it until December.
The task force wraps up his business and the end of December. It would be surprising if a couple of them didn't move over to the planning board or apply. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, so I think my thinking is, like we should be having interviews in November or December or something. I mean, town board.
They're really good. It's a very, very good group.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead, Karen.
Our current announcement, Bill, you mentioned like that the town is recruiting, but I don't see anything. I don't think.
Oh, no. In the past, they've sort of recruited by maybe, they put out one email on the listserv saying.
We need to do that again. I mean, we did. We paused doing that because of Charles, but it's time to do it. So,
yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is, I think that more than just putting an email out in the listserv, that it, again, if someone gets a note from someone they know, that they're a little more likely to act on it. So I would say, and maybe this needs to be what happens in November or something for applications in December. But
I have done so already, just FYI for people. But
okay.
I think if the town board sends out the announcement now, though, I actually think that there will be more interest because there's been a lot of interest just generally in the town recently. So I'm hoping.
I think we have our business meeting next Wednesday, so it'll be a good time just to do it. To state it again publicly. I mean, clearly this got side railed by by needing to put together this task force.
And from my point of view, like my intention had been to get through this draft, so to take all of the edits that we're planning on making to it and then hand those off. And then I don't think after that, like I don't think I would play a really important role in formatting or things are getting like I spent 4 hours this afternoon on Zoom meetings. I'm like, so I'm excited to get this thing in a position where for me to step away, everybody can feel good that it's gotten all the attention that it needs to get to the next stage for me. At which point it's really in the town board's hands, really. But so I hadn't planned on staying on much past probably this month because I'm assuming if we can get through these comments, basically I can make those edits and that whole section will be tip top and reflect all of our awesome feedback that we've gotten.
All right. Great. And what it's looking like, and we'll see how it goes tonight, obviously, but it's partly because we are val-less, but also at some point we need to sort of get back once the edits are made and make sure we're all happy with the final, whatever. We probably need to have another meeting here in October. So maybe a couple of weeks from now, but let's treat that near the end of the meeting. But that's, I'm just looking at the stuff saying, if we're going to get done this month, we probably need to do another meeting this month. Sorry about that. Okay, next topic. And so yes, Catherine, I messed up. I forgot to attach Bruce's comments when I said the comments are attached. So none of you, therefore, I just sent it out just now again.
Honestly, given my day, it's possible they were there and I just physically did not see them.
All right. So, but I mean, the general question still sits there. So, we got these comments today. So this is officially after the deadline. It's not, we gotten 20 comments. I don't know. So the one question is whether, it's a page. It's not that like a lot of extra work to do, but it's sort of a principal question of, but also Bruce has been on the planning board, right? So do you guys want to, at this point, we can't discuss his comments because you guys didn't get them until maybe just now. But the question in general is, okay, I sent them to you. Should we try to incorporate, at least look at them and think about it? Or because after the deadline, no, we don't do that. That's the question.
Oh, I wasn't clear on like whether it was like, sure, let's look at them. I don't know what you like incorporating them.
Well, like everyone says, do we treat them like everybody's comments? And I didn't want to unilaterally tell Bruce, great, thank you for sending these in. If you guys all said, no, we've got a lot of comments. He sent them in a week after the deadline. It's too late. But I didn't think you'd think that, but I didn't want to make a decision unilaterally. So if you guys are okay accepting them, then we will. That's always really checking in. Accepting simply means that we'll look at them.
It's fine with me.
Okay. All right. So now you got them because I just sent them like 10 minutes ago.
Okay, let me take a peek then.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. So
Do we want to look at them just like when we get to them? I mean, or do we want to keep on working through the backlog of comments that we were hoping to get through tonight? Because it's already 6.
yes, yeah, I want to know. So I just want to establish that question. I don't know. We could look at Bruce's first if you want, or we can go to where we were. I also sent out an email suggesting that we do at least some stuff in. Last time I sort of put off Don's comments because again, the format they were in was at least difficult for me to negotiate more. But I put them in a document, so it's easier for me to sort of see what all he was talking about. And I know there's at least a couple things in there that I felt was important for us to talk about. So, because what we had sort of said is each of us would look at the comments he made about our particular sections, but a couple of them I think merit a little bit more general discussion. So we can either do Don's stuff or we can skip that till later. We can continue in the alphabet where we were. We can do Bruce's now. Because they're short. What do you guys want to do? That was a question.
Yeah.
I mean, I just looked at Bruce's. I think the thing that stands out for me is his comment at the end, which I think is, well, it's an interesting question of whether or not it is not equitable to proceed until there is some sort of in-person, event for people who don't have internet access. I don't know. But, in terms of the rest of the comments, I think there wasn't a whole lot there that is going to change the text. I mean, I agree with everything he's proposing. I think it's, yes, we want to.
So yeah, are we even allowed to have I mean, I guess you could have an in-person, the town could have, so at this point, the next state of review is the town board hearing, right? So, and there's Zoom and there's the mail and there's email. Those are all valid ways to submit comments in person. Like if I was on the town board, I wouldn't be psyched to be in a room with a bunch of people.
It's not going to happen.
I say, coming at it from my point of view, there's no way you'd get me into that room other than being on a video screen. So I'm not sure if we're waiting. I mean, I'm not sure what
requires response is what I'm saying. So if it's just been handed down by, Tim, who's the town board rep, to say that is not going to happen, then someone needs to respond. I think it's worth a response of some kind to say, we appreciate this. It is an issue of equity. However, given the current climate, yada, yada.
We continue to follow the governor's guidelines.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what I would say to Bruce is sort of that, but also, I mean, I think it felt to people like, the public hearing was just one of the venues, right? That's why we had the written comments also. Exactly. And now you had to hear about it. Now I understand that a lot of the hearing about it was also a town listserv announcement, but that's different than internet access. But but also we put signs up and there were notices in the paper. So
and the hearing, I mean, I was shocked at how little happened at the hearing. I mean, it was like a non-issue. So
the sign in front of my house was up for a month.
Yeah. So again, I'm not trying to be defensive, but I really think we tried to reach out and gave the fact that you could use a regular phone to dial into the hearing, even if you don't have internet. So I would make those points, but I would, in my druthers, I think I said this at the meeting, my druthers would have been to have an in-person hearing because that's sort of the tradition of the town. People like to look you in the eye when they're making their comments. I've been on both sides of this thing, I understand that, but it will be up to town board how to run the next one. But I guess I sort of rejected that, people don't have internet access, so they haven't been able to contribute to this process. I do think it makes it harder, but Frank Proto dropped his letter off in person at the town hall.
Well, then maybe having some, and I mean, this might be something for the business meeting, Tim, I don't know, just having some announcement on the town website. Again, you need the internet access to get to the website, but or a sign in front of the town hall or something just to.
Do they?
There was,
do they
there
ever,
was a sign. There was a
No,
sign.
not for the public hearing, but just to say like, indicate some completion and we are moving forward and, you know.
We'll have another sign when we have the next public hearing.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
do we ever? Does the town? I mean, it seems like not necessarily the best. It seems like it'd be relatively expensive, maybe. But is there ever like, whatever it is, third-class mailings of postcards or something where they'd be printed with that information and go out to every house on a route, basically in the town of Caroline, that has information about how you can attend virtually, that you can call in, that you can send in a letter, that you can email. I just wonder if this is, so I'm trying to, basically I'm just trying to reflect on the idea that it's, like some people are overwhelmed during the pandemic, and just even not being able to clearly possibly find their way to the way they could contribute just makes them look at the process and go, this process is bad. When in reality, it's not bad. It's just, we're all like having a problem dealing with the new reality. Right. And so is there any way we can help with that wayfinding like that?
The supervisor is working on a town newsletter, a supervisor's newsletter, and it might be happening this quickly. I'll look into it. It's something that we can look into.
Okay.
It's simply, for this, it might be appropriate. Can't do it all the time because there's manpower and costs and things like that.
Yeah.
But, we might be able to get double. If the supervisor's newsletter is happening now, that would be in it anyway. So I'll look into it.
Okay. Ken, who is now attending here, the first, he didn't have access to a computer at home, is my understanding. And so it's not easy. We're also into the computer world. I think it's hard to fully get that, but the whole point is that there are ways to contribute that don't take computers, but it typically takes a computer to learn that. So I like the idea of a mailing going out or something like that.
I was on the board of the Ellis Hollow Community Center for a year or two. I can't remember how long, but that's generally how they would tell people in Ellis Hollow about what was going on. They do some special kind of mailing. It was third class. It was some particular kind of route where it's got delivered to every address from A to B, and we'd print a fold over newsletter. It would go out with all the events and like, we need your money. We need, we're trying to fundraise for this, etc.
The reality is that the mailing lists that we have access to are taxpayers, the town. So that is land taxpayers. So that is necessarily delimited. So we wouldn't have necessarily addresses for all the residents of the town. And they're also across 2 or 3 different townships because of the nature of the repost. So we've been talking about this actually.
Great.
Okay. Cool.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And I guess the only one thing I do want to extract from Bruce's comments, because this came up in one other comment, because he's talking about, the mention of zoning and some other land use control. He said, hey, wait, this wasn't in the survey. I guess to me, the survey, again, he worked intensively on that, so that maybe is what's front and center in his mind. But, some of that language is coming from comments made, to us in the town board earlier this spring. There's been lots of feedback besides just that survey. So I personally don't feel there's a problem mentioning zoning just because it wasn't a question on the survey. But I did want to raise the question because that's an objection Bruce was bringing up. So to me, there's no conflict or problem there, no need for modifying what we've got. But he obviously was wondering about that. So if you have any thoughts to contribute to that,
I think that if the plan is advocating, if what we're trying to summarize is that there's a strong sentiment that land use regulation in some way, shape, or form is very amenable to the town's goals as they've been communicated to us, that there's no there's no big issue with any particular strategies for land use regulation. Bringing up any of them is part of the same sentiment. So whether it's zoning or formula business restrictions or design guidelines or whatever it might be, these are like flavors. And everybody wants ice cream is what we're being told. Everybody wants a better idea of what can be done where to maintain these goals like open space, rural character. Those flavors will be figured out, and the plan isn't saying which flavors will be used, which strategies will be used to achieve that. We're saying overwhelmingly the feedback we've gotten is that these things are important, and right now we don't have any way to protect them, and that there's anxiety because of that. That's what when I think about zoning, whether it's in the document or not, I don't actually think it's a big deal either way. But to me, it's part of the puzzle that we're talking about.
Okay. Let's see. So I guess before we launch, there's just one thing. I don't know. All right. Should we take a look at some of the comments again back on the road where we were? Okay. Anybody remember? We were probably on Irene, weren't we? I think
Yeah,
we
that's
talked
where
about
we left
Greg
off.
Reynolds. All right. Let me pull Irene's up. All right. So she talks about, she has a statement about the land acknowledgement, that it's nice, but smacks of tokenism because unless there's actions. I think that's not the point of the land acknowledgement. I'm still okay with it, and she's the only one that has raised an objection.
That certainly got a lot of positive comments in the public hearing.
Right.
Catherine, is that what you're going to say? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, just to save ourselves time, I thought we had decided that the elected officials' comments were not going to be reviewed until they were going to review them anyway.
No, I don't think we did. I think Tim said anything we could do now would be helpful if there were suggestions there. And but I think the main thing is she had some comments about emergency services, and we did sort of touch on that. So Charles, I think that, either incorporate that or maybe talk to her, email her, get her latest take on things. There's something about it, communications, broadband also needed for healthcare.
Sure, I think that's fine. That's
line drops. Yeah, I mean, so stuff like that. I mean, if that seemed reasonable to people, that we want to help tie in the general advantages of broadband, but she's also talking about the fact that running the line down the street is one thing, having it affordable to connect to is another.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what it says in the plan right now just focuses on there being access to broadband.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I think that it's because of what level of details the plan need to go into. I mean, the plan doesn't need to specify. There ought to be affordable line drops. The plan says people ought to have essentially affordable access to broadband internet or something like that.
So I think including making sure the word affordable is in there, making sure that we include the fact that it's used for healthcare, especially now, is a good addition as well. The emergency services section, I'm going to look at it a little bit more carefully relative to the exact goals that I have written. But I think that obviously what the stuff that's incorrect needs to be corrected. And the goals are the things that I'll look at relative to what I've written and figure out if there's a way that it makes sense if the feedback makes sense with all the other stuff that the other feedback we've gotten. Because we had a lot of people talking about emergency services and needing more investment, more volunteers, that sort of thing in the emergency services in Caroline. So that's a lot of the feedback we got at the livability hearing, certainly, the livability cafe.
Yeah, and she lists a goal of the town should consider consolidation of the agencies providing fire and emergency services to the town. I mean, she's steeped in this. That might be really good advice, but to be honest, I don't know if we talked about that at we had public input on that question. So
no, that's what I
would
mean.
be
Like, that's the stuff.
leery of adding that goal just because we don't have,
Right. So that's an example of something that doesn't match up with the feedback that we've gotten in other places, which is what I was trying to, I guess, I should have been more specific. Whereas the first one, I think, is a more broad goal that probably I would either work into a goal that's already there or set out as a separate.
Okay. And I have a similar response on her energy comments. Why is there no mention of vision for community or large-scale solar farms? We didn't gather any input on that. This is the community's vision. No one in the community brought forward that. We could have pushed that out there. Energy independence. I mean, again, this is her thing. She's steeped in it, and she'll have a chance, I guess, to wage on the town board. But I feel uncomfortable treading and adding all this stuff in that I don't have, general public, input on. So how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like that's fine.
Just some stuff about school districts and development. I'm not interested in making more maps now, but okay, let's see. So it's interesting to provide a map of the various school districts with an overlay of where development is happening and likely to happen. Beyond our expertise, I don't know where development is likely to happen other than along Route 79. This could be done, and if the town board wants that kind of study done, then I think you guys should hire someone to do that and make you guys that map. Sorry, I know I'm being a little cavalier with Irene's stuff here, but I just, good questions, but it's a bit beyond, I think, the data we have.
I'm just an observer.
I know. She said, how far up the students would be willing to live? Is Boyceville the limit? I don't know. Catherine says, so she makes she says agriculture. At one point, there was a working group started by Aaron Snow, modeled after Energy Independent Caroline, called Food Independent Caroline. Mm-hmm. Is food independence still a vision for the town? Ever heard of that? Know that one?
I'm aware, but it
didn't go anywhere.
I don't mean to be. Yeah, I'm gonna be an observer with Tim.
Yeah.
I'm pleading the fifth.
Well, then I think we should move on because I think if we're not
getting
any feedback.
I don't know what to say. She is very well aware of what the history is of all these things in the town. So I don't really know what to do with her comments, with respect.
I would assume that they will be rehearsed again. So
yeah. I only bring up the last one. She says she suggests adding a section similar to the previous comp plan that lists all the goals in one place. And I've been debating this. I can't remember, and I'm happy to do it. It's not that hard to produce if that would be useful. And so one question is, do you think that would be useful? I mean, if I did it, I would sort of list the, actually I was going to list the action and maybe the goal that it was referring back to. And that could happen. Do either of you guys, and Tim, I'll let you vote on this video. Does that sound like a useful addition to the plan to have everything summarized sort of that way?
When Ken was speaking about his confusion, I actually, not having read that, thought that might be a good idea.
That was going to be my feedback when you brought it up. It was just like, well, it's clear there's confusion between the assessment and what's in the current versus what's not. And it might be that some of the stuff that Ken was even talking about as being really good stuff is actually still in the plan as good stuff, but it's because it's not listed in the same format, it's being missed. So I think that'd be a great idea. Certainly it'd be a worthwhile idea to check out and see, if it seems more communicative than having them only spread out across the sections.
Okay. And I've been remiss here. Charles, can you open up that Word Google Doc unless you did already?
I've already got it. I'm adding stuff to it already.
I should have counted on that. Okay. No,
I'm already in there.
Awesome. Yeah, I knew. All right. Great. Okay, so then Jim Burlich. Okay, so he speaks in support of town-granted conservation easements. And he says, I may have missed a description of that process and mention of where it may have been used successfully, but if he didn't miss it, that'd be great to add. And sort of, I guess my feeling is I might. This conservation easements has come up a bit also on the task force on land use, so I will be looking at it, and so I'll have some of the kind of stuff that Jim's asked for here. But again, it's a question of what level of detail does the comp plan have? Does it want to get down into the nitty gritty of the various tools, or just, again, mention them broadly? So I'm a little not sure of adding a lot more info on conservation easements in particular as the particular tool to use. So it's one of the few available probably to the town.
Did we make the decision last time we were going to put in a description of, was it formula? No.
It was formula business restrictions. We need a better definition of, I think we did talk about that, which Val added to the appendix he added on, but I want to get to that. I think that's not the right place for it, but that's.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it would certainly follow with that precedent that when we're introducing something that's
new,
possibly not well understood, that at least it makes clear what we were talking about. If there's any discussion down the line, I guess there's pros and cons to that, because I don't really know even the sort of breadth of a conversation about what a town conservation easement might be. So by defining it very rigidly, we're putting, a box around what it is, rather than having it be this phrase that could be fleshed out in the direction that, frankly, the town finds useful. That maybe we don't.
Definitions also, right? Like, actually,
right.
Hiking along the section of the Finger Lakes Trail, which was just totally rerouted to whatever the county line is, through what would have been Fire Tower Road, is where the road, the trail used to go, right? And now it goes through this beautiful field, and we thought, oh, it must be a new easement, and in fact, it's now Finger Lakes Land Trust. But that changed, overnight. So that's something that I don't think we should be delineating, is my point. Or we don't need to delineate, because it can change, and that's not, I don't know if that's private land. It was private land, now it's in a land. It looks like whether it's an easement, whether it's a, what the tax designation is going to change. I mean, the whole point is to preserve open space, and I think that we've delineated that as a goal.
Right.
I mean, the action step, isn't there an action step to learn more about or educate people about the different options of what they can do with their land in terms of entering it into easements, or did that not make it in?
No, I think there is an action step that says the town should, and I only have two computers. I can't pull everything up at one time. But that the town's supposed to help, I think, educate people about, options.
Yeah.
And if not, that area should be in there. But I do get it that maybe, I'll look at where that is. I think it first comes up in the environmental section, and if it looks like it needs a little more information of what, because I think it is sort of a glancing mention, but I don't want to get into a lot of details of, of it, because it just feels inappropriate for this.
Well, I guess I'm also saying when it means whether the town enters into it, implies that the town is the landowner. That's not.
Oh no, the town is the holder of right. The town is the holder of an agreement with the landowner, as opposed to the land trust does that a lot too, and then sometimes the land trust takes over the property. But that's a different.
Yeah. So the
Right.
action step, the action step in the comprehensive plan, as it's written right now, says hold workshops for landowners to
Right.
learn about conservation easements and other ways
Right.
to protect private land.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
remembering. I think
Yeah.
that's perfect.
That's good. Okay.
Okay.
And then he's the other one who mentioned that about zoning, and it wasn't in the survey, but he says he just is urging that the process of establishing zoning needs to be transparent and it involved all the stakeholders, that it wouldn't be too scary. And I sure, agreed.
I think that if all we were saying in this document was the town needs zoning, period, I think that potentially talking more about how the town's approach to zoning would be really important. But again, from my perspective, we're not saying the town needs zoning. We're saying the town needs better land use regulation,
Right.
and including some examples of which zoning is one. And I think that again winds up being a much more flexible response that allows the town board or whoever, the town, it allows them to employ the tools that they think will achieve protecting the rural character and open and livability and all that kind of thing for the town. Zoning may very well be a useful tool, and that process should be open and transparent. But we're not writing a treatise on zoning. Like we're not making the case for zoning. We're making the case for strengthening the tools that the town has to make sure it develops in a way that residents have said they feel is important. So I don't feel like the plan needs more of a roadmap for how to go about getting zoning into place, because that's not what the plan is.
Right. Yeah. What I didn't read was where he says if the plan contained more details about the process, and I'm there. I agree with you. I think that is going more into it again. Then I agree with your basic position that, hey, we're mentioning an array of tools, and but Catherine, you okay with that, or? All right. Let's see, Kate Kelly McKenzie, just a thank you and a support of the plan.
Public transit, bike trails.
Public transit and bike trails. So, and I did at one time make a table. I was sort of like trying to keep track, and again, there's, from what I can see, broad support for the kind of things we've been saying, and certainly trails have gotten a bit of support. More land use control has gotten a bunch of support, and the overall plan has gotten a lot of support. Okay, Ken, we're doing yours next.
Feel free to start. I just have to run for a quick moment. I'll be right back, but feel free to pop in.
All right. Okay, so Ken brings up the point that, of course, many residents are opposed to zoning, and that's true. And what I'm waiting to hear is hear more from them, because they should be contributing to this process. And but zoning is not the only possible tool to be adopted, but I do think it needs to be on the table. And so again, I hear the concerns. And Ken, you're here, so you can hear me directly. Let's see, you say, I think that one thing about zoning that, again, I'm learning, because I don't know every last thing about it, is that zoning can be anything from pretty simple to very complex. It can be very restrictive, or it can be fairly open. And I think that would be the key thing to help communicate and to actually do. What we might well want is a zoning that says, in these large rural areas, that subdividing obviously is okay, and selling off some acreage so you can keep the farm going is okay. It doesn't have to say that it takes away. Zoning does not take away all one's rights to the property. But I get the sort of bad taste in the mouth reference, and the comments we haven't gotten to yet from a fellow who lives here who grew up in Wisconsin. He grew up in a rural community that had zoning, and he said, everything I've done to the property would have been possible under zoning in Wisconsin. So it doesn't mean that all the capabilities are lost. So I think that part of it is understanding that. I guess that's, since you're here, I'm sort of responding to your sentiment there. But I hope in a way that gets you to understand that I am sort of sensitive to the worries and concerns, and would want to work out, if we went with zoning, work out with a kind of zoning that allows people the freedom to do the sort of reasonable kind of things they want to do with their land. That's sort of my take on it, while preserving important things that people say they want to maintain in Caroline. Okay, anyone want to say something about the Big Z zoning before we're moving on to some of the specific things that Ken mentioned?
I think the main thing I would say is there's no, I mean, again, zoning is a tool, and I don't even know if it'll be the one that the town winds up using. And frankly, like what we've gotten the most feedback on, even prior to the pandemic, so we can talk about what's happened, you know, and in more recent times, but an overwhelming amount of the information that we've received from the community relates to how do we maintain the things that we're valuing in our communities, which are things like open space, rural character, water, natural resources. And those things are the things that are driving the recommendation of the plan of increased land use regulation. So how that happens, how the town feels that it's what it's telling us is important to it is protected, that's TBD. But it's what was clear from what people were communicating is that those things are important, and there was a feeling of discontent with the power of the tools that are currently in place to adequately protect those things. And so I appreciate hearing about people's thoughts on zoning. I just think it's all very premature, because just because the word zoning shows up 6 times or whatever it is in this document doesn't mean that zoning is the way that these goals will be achieved. You know, it's so
It looks like
it's easy for me to say it as someone that doesn't have a lot of things that'll probably be affected by zoning. You know, I hear that too, but it's just, I think it's quick. I don't want this to get focused on zoning, because that's not the point of the document. That's all.
And Catherine, go ahead, and then Ken raised his hand.
Ken had his hand up.
Yeah, that's I was going to go recognize it. Okay, so Ken, I'll give you a few minutes to talk with us. So hope you'll be able to unmute yourself now. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, just real quick on the zoning. When in the past here, I thought of zoning. Oh my, the whole town has to have this block and that block and everything. Like we're learning through Greg with our meetings and the task force. Hey, the only zoning that might take place could be along Route 79, maybe a couple of zones. You don't have to have the whole town zoned. And so that's, a lot is how do I want to say? I'm gaining a lot of experience on this task force and knowledge that doesn't make me feel that much better about zoning, but I realize, okay, there's a difference in my past thoughts and what is coming about. Thanks.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Ken. I think that's all we can hope for all of us, that we all keep open minds about what we're going into. So thanks a lot for sharing that. And I look forward to learning a lot more about what we're going to do as the weeks and months go on too. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Ken, for sharing. I really appreciate that. So we already talked about making sure that Speedsville is indeed mentioned in places where it should be. Let's see.
I do want to just point out one of his comments gets back to the idea that there's a gap in the ability of town residents to learn about, and we've talked about this a little bit, learn about providing input to, it just sounds like it's the comprehensive plan right now, but it might be related to the moratorium. It might be related to some other aspect of government, and that they feel discriminated against in this community. And probably, the pandemic and being 100% electronic right now is just making that worse. So I just want to put that out there, that that's not something that we can deal with in the plan, I think, but I think that it's something that probably the town board needs to consider, which you already are, but I'm just reiterating it because it's coming up here again. What are the other strategies going to be, irrespective of the comprehensive plan? to deal with the really unequal distribution, even of internet, much less the economic inequality that so much of the feedback is designed around. How can we encourage more participation in a way by making sure people find out about stuff? So if there's a moment at the business meeting, at a business meeting, to talk about that, I think it'd be worthwhile, because we've heard that a few times now, I feel like.
Well, I guess I wasn't planning on saying anything, but now you've inspired me to just reiterate that there were recommendations made by me and others around, statements related to specifically racial equity, and to my knowledge, other than what we've done in this planning board and in the comp plan, which I'm glad we've done, none of those steps have been taken. So I guess would just reiterate, this is a common theme of diversity, inclusion, equity work that I don't know in how many other ways to pass it on to the board. I mean, Tim obviously is passionate about this, so you're the kind of torchbearer in my mind, of this, but
the board has actively discussed this. Maybe not in the last 2 meetings, because just a lot of other stuff is on, but I'm quite confident that that's something that we really want to figure out how to address in the best way, But I hear you.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's the resistance on the board to this.
I don't think there's resistance. It's like
more question of carving out the time to make it happen and figure out the best way to make it happen.
Right.
But there have been, if you look at the minutes of the past couple of months, there have been active discussions on the board about it.
And, and some things, if they were easy, would be done. I mean, obviously, trying to make sure that, those who don't have good access are included in discussions. And it's just difficult to reach into some of these low-income households. And I know that when I was going around petitioning around the fracking issue, you'd come across people that you could they were disempowered and disconnected. They just felt they couldn't impact things when really they could. That's part of what we try to do, is give them hope that, your voice does matter. And so getting out there in the community, but it's much harder now in COVID times, but getting out and helping people feel empowered so they will then participate is a key thing. It's just not easy. So,
I mean, what's been interesting in terms of the COVID is, prior to COVID, we could count on participation in board meetings from a small group of very, very vocal people. That small group has tended not to come to board meetings since COVID, but the public participation in board meetings has exploded since COVID electronically.
Right,
but we recognize that these are different populations that we have to figure out a better way to accommodate everybody. It's been very interesting to see. And we have to get broadband internet somehow the hell out here, and it's really a challenge. And there's actually a new countywide initiative that might provide some inroads to that, but it's a real tough thing.
Okay, good. Yes, because we still hear that, and it's still true. I mean, there's good sectors of the town that need that
a lot.
And so I think that's key. I think for Caroline's health going forward, as we all see, that's key. So he's got some typos to correct here, so we'll certainly do all that. And then can you make some good points about again, large farming, dairying, haying, as I mean, it's difficult to be profitable and to keep going. And as you said, dairying is just about out of Caroline. And so what we're left with indeed is the hope that smaller niche farms will do it. And you say that people can make a living, they're growing old, no one to buy the purchase of large land. So we're left with this conundrum of, as you have said, and as Catherine has echoed, you can't just mandate that something be farmed, right? There has to be a rational reason, like either I like it as my hobby or I can make money at it. Yet at the same time, conserving that land so it could be farmed sometime in the future seems to be important. It may not be the best economic use of the land today, but we don't know about 20 or 30 years from now, or as Alan said, 40, 50, 100 years from now. And if we take all that land and allow houses and buildings and structures built all over it, and you mix the top surface with the subsurface, it's lost forever. So a conundrum. Can't mandate it be farmed, yet we could lose it forever if we're not careful. So that's the line that we're trying to figure out. And I don't know an answer to it exactly yet, but I think that that's the community discussion has to be about how important is it for us to maintain options for farming, if not farming, or at least maintaining of open space for the various benefits in terms of vistas and clean air and clean water that provides. So I think a well-stated concern on your part. All right, you say you'd like to, I just respond because since you're in that call, I'm going to respond. You say you'd like to see map 1.1, 1.3, 1.4 show roads much better. I'll take a look at that. I have limited ability to control some of these things. I have people who make maps for me. I don't know if I can show the roads better and not cloud other things. But maybe we can try that. I'll take a look at that. I promise to look at that. You mentioned a directive of commercial properties and local businesses. Isn't that, did we put that in the livability section, creating such a thing? If not, I think Don Barber mentions it also to some extent.
Yeah, so the goal that we have, it has to do with creating a, at least a census, a survey of basically figuring out what all the locally owned businesses even are, is what the plan advocates for in the livability section. Because that was something we ran into commercial processes, commercial businesses. So conduct a local business survey to determine the number and scale of Caroline-based small businesses, commercial sites, farms, and industrial operations. And so I think an outcome of that could certainly be like an index, but it'd be the sort of thing that would have to be kept up as well. So somebody would have to really take ownership and responsibility for that.
Yeah.
That could be like a local business committee or something like that. But I think the first problem is actually, if places like Carson aren't on there on the list of commercial properties in Caroline, there's quite possibly other smaller businesses that aren't as well.
All right, so just quickly, you asked about the reference from Schickel. I mean, one of our members called up Schickel and asked how many people live there and stuff like that. So there's no information in that reference other than what exactly is in the document. So that was just basically a quick phone call. And we already did discuss last meeting a mobile clinic or something here, which is the next point you make, which is great. I don't think a doctor or dentist is going to locate an office in Brookendale or Sladeville Springs, but I think we do have a goal and a hope, and we think we're going to add it back in to have some sort of periodic, mobile clinic here. So that's.
And I think that the point was brought up earlier of broadband being useful for telemedicine as well as another important reason for broadband to penetrate further into the communities, because that's at least a first step. That could be a first step for lots of people to figuring out if they need further care.
Okay, and the comments also speak in support of the environmental justice statement needing to address differences in income more stringently with economic review. Agreed. That's why we have that in it. And you also speak in support of the regulations for abandonment of poorly built and unused structures. That's why there's a mention of an escrow fund. Again, I think that is a problem, right? There's just, how do we set it up so that the town and others don't become liable for a failed business structure? And so I think that's how we're trying to treat that thing. Sorry about the colors and the maps. Again, I have limited control over what people do on some of that. We can try, but they have a limited, colors have to be distinct enough, and then you need several different colors. It's hard to always do that. Accentuate in the rural character section, the right to farm law, and the notice to respective neighbor. So I think that as we discussed in the task force, I think people do get notified. Catherine, you got notified, I think, right, when you guys bought your property. So I
when
think
you
that
buy
was
the
happening.
land, that's an ag district thing, not a farm, right to farm. You sign a statement of understanding that you're in an ag district, and, they delineate like noise and smells and so on. Is that what you're referring to, Ken?
And if you want to speak, Ken, I'll let you unmute.
Yeah, basically that's right. It's, I guess there I'm trying to point out, make sure that disclosure is, the code enforcement person understands that he needs to do that, have it signed to just alert them.
Okay. Is that not being done in your mind, or?
And it sounds like it may be done. I haven't bought any land in 30 years now.
Yeah.
I can't afford it, but at that time we didn't have to sign anything, and it was a farm anyway.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I've got on the end of Landon Road now. There's counting the one just across. There'll be 4 new residents there that I hope understand that I might be passing through at 10, 11 o'clock at night to get my work done. To not, and that's why I'm building a barn and a shed so that I don't have to travel quite so far. That's going to work out good for me. But right now I need to go from some of my fields all the way around to Lounsbury to put equipment away and keep it hay out of the rain and whatnot. So, and that may happen at 10 o'clock at night.
Right. And that's in an ag district?
Not very often anymore.
Can't remember.
Yes.
Okay. So then they would have,
Yes,
yeah.
my property's in ag.
So they should have signed. Yeah.
So I mean, I know they've had several different code enforcement people. It just, they need to kind of know that. And I think Tim pointed out one time to us in our task force that signature page is connected somehow with the permit. It's there when I think when they're getting their permit and they sign that. So I'm kind of good knowing that that's happening. Just that each code enforcement officer knows they need to do this, because I don't know how many acres, but quite a bit of Caroline is in an ag district.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember now for some reason, because I've been reading so much stuff, but it's either in the site plan review or one of the town laws that there is a requirement to provide some kind of an announcement of right to farm. I think it's to people seeking building.
It's in the right to farm law that we have.
Yeah, and
the right to farm law.
I think it's for when you get a building permit. And I'm actually going to follow that up just to make sure that that's happening, because we've had some transitions in that office.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it actually does come from the code officer.
It does.
Or if it's transfer of the parcel itself.
No, it's from what our thing has to do with the code officer. It's just an attachment to, like, I think it was
I guess what I'm sharing is that
building permit.
What I'm sharing is that even without building on land, my recollection is that you take ownership of the land. We've had our land for years before there was anything on it, so it would not have been associated with the permit of any kind.
Right.
But it's
Right.
still
No, I think that there are 2 different mechanisms. So
Yeah, I think there's 2 things going on. Like I said, if you're in an ag district and you buy that property, you're probably told you're in the ag district. In addition to that, because Caroline has a right to farm law, if you are going to build something, then the code officer is supposed to give you something that says there's a right to farm law, something like that.
So Ken, you might be totally right, because this was back before our current code officer, and I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't know.
So,
and I believe that some of the real estate people do that also when they just sell a piece of property, but I don't know if that's in some sort of law for them.
Yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't tell you that. I know it is for the code enforcement.
Good question.
all right. So can I get I only got you unmuted. I want to ask you one quick question here, because you mentioned about because you and I talked about this once on the phone about trying to help, since one of the bottom line problems is helping farms make enough money to stay in business, is trying to put some pressure on the fire departments to tax farmlands on their ag assessment instead of the full value. One question is whether that's legal. I mean, the town can't easily tax things at different rates. I don't know if the fire departments can, but the real question I have is that really all that helpful? I mean, I think that your school tax is probably the biggest thing, and then the general property tax. Is the fire tax enough money that if it were reduced somewhat, it would really help some farms stay in business? So I'm going to just ask you that since you're online here.
Well, I would say that anytime a farmer can save $1 is good. Okay, so what happens is if let's say your farm is assessed full value at $100,000, the land though in ag assessment reduces to the use of that land, which would be crops and things, the assessment on it by a certain amount. Now the fire department has the ability by law to say, okay, we will put the percentage of tax you on that value of the land. Now the buildings stay the same. It's just the land. So that may mean that if the land was worth $75,000, let's go a little $50,000, and then the ag assessment reduced that land value for what it's used for to $25,000. Now the fire department could, their tax rate would be on the $25,000 instead of the $50,000. At this time, I don't know of any of the fire departments in Caroline that have said, okay, we agree to tax at that ag value of your property. And it could be substantial for large amounts of land.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you.
I realize
Okay, so I'm hearing from you is that
it'd be nice if you guys could somehow pressure them a little bit.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, because this is the part I wasn't sure, you say you are certain that it is legal for the fire departments to tax at the ag assessment rate.
Yes.
Okay, that's good for me to know. And then, and if it really would help, I think I'm willing to explore that. My question is really.
They have to vote on it.
Yeah.
They have to vote on it themselves, and they haven't.
Okay.
I don't know if I have that much land that I could give you some actual difference.
I just looked at my tax
taxes.
bill if you really want to know. And it's
I was
not
getting
that
the mail
much.
today.
I mean, it's a
It's
couple
what?
$100 on several $1,000s is the fire. But you have to have. I mean, I think
That's what you would say.
I know I'm saying the total percentage of your total tax bill that's fire is unfortunately very small. But in terms of ag assessment, what you're saying is, which I agree, but it only applies to the people who would even have ag assessment, which I think then goes back to this whole idea of like, what's a producing farm? And as we know, there are very, very few of them. So it's just a conundrum, because if you really want to have this applied, it should be applied to like a certain size parcel, right? No matter what you're doing with it.
Well, if a farm qualifies for ag assessment, I don't know the name of the greenhouse there on 79. Okay.
Larchwood?
But it used to be
Larchwood Farms.
The fella from Larchwood Farms. Okay. If they produce enough in their greenhouse in sales, not the greenhouse itself, but the land under the greenhouse could qualify for ag assessment. So it's a thing that is the assessors. I mean, every year you sign a thing, and there's there's regular rules that apply to ag assessment. How many acres, what value of crops you sell, etc. So someone with that's selling at a roadside stand will probably not, they have to do over $10,000 worth of business at that roadside stand. But if they did and they were doing it off of 3 acres, that 3 acres could qualify.
Okay,
So there is written rules
Right.
how you get your ag assessment.
Right. And I think it's just the challenge is that there's very few farms, unfortunately, in our town at this point that meet the threshold.
So Ken, that was some discussion that this committee had a while back, and that's partly why we wound up at just conservation easements in general, that there seems to be an inequity. I mean, for the larger traditional farmers like yourself, the ag assessment can work, again, if you have enough business, but there's a lot of smaller things that we might want to call farms that don't qualify, but that we might still want to help out. And so we've been faced with China how to figure out, do we do that? But like I say, and the other bottom line is this.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and as Catherine pointed out, is the fire tax actually enough? But you're saying, hey, any dollar is a dollar, and I hear that too. And it's always, of course, a tax burden shift, because if you aren't paying it as you as a farmer, not pointing the finger at you, but then therefore someone else in town has to pay that dollar to the fire people. And I think that may be an appropriate switch to make if we're trying to support agriculture, but that tax shift does happen. And so great, thank you for those thoughts. And last thing I want to mention, you mentioned something about, traffic speeds and tractors on the road and stuff. Good point. I think that you take that as the town board and not the planning board. I mean, the planning board in the comp plan has put in support for agriculture, and then you can take that to the town board and say, look, your comp plan, it speaks out in support of agriculture, so here's one of the problems in town. The comp plan is not going to talk about the fact we should put a tractor sign up on Midall Road or Lounsbury Road. It's just, it's a detail we won't get down to.
But we did put out that the action step is to put up a right to farm signs.
Yeah, and then you can take the comp plan and whack them over the head with it, right? That's the idea. So, and yeah, I think we have the right to farm sign should be up.
I mean,
Please don't whack. Please don't whack me over the head.
Sign with a slow.
Yeah.
But I think you've seen the signs with a tractor that's going down the road.
Yeah.
That's the kind of sign I'm thinking of. The right to farm doesn't tell those people to slow down, but hopefully that tractor sign on the end of a road will help them realize there's tractors maybe around the corner as you round it.
And indeed, that's something
It's only a little help.
under the purview of the highway superintendent.
Right.
Can you work
Talk
on
to
tractor signs?
the town board and the highway superintendent.
Oh,
Catherine, what were you saying?
I was just gonna
Thanks
say,
for listening.
You can work on the tractor signs, and I'm working on the horse signs with Bobby, and we'll all work together. I'm on a mission.
All right, great. We are approaching 7 o'clock. Charles, are you done at 7? All right.
Yeah, I gotta head out.
All right, so I think we'll reconvene and try to make faster progress next time. It was useful to have the back and forth with Ken since he was here, but and I know I spent some time on other things as well, and I got started late. But so can we meet in a couple of weeks? My daughter's visiting next week, so it's not a good time for me to have a meeting next week. Is that feasible, or is there a different time you guys would like, or should we just hold off until November, which is?
I think I'm here and available to meet in a couple of weeks. And I would just like to, I don't know, I kind of think that maybe before then, what I would maybe a slightly different approach is have one of our goals to have each of us, if we haven't looked at these comments, if there are comments that we think are valid based upon our own sections with what we haven't made through in all the comments so far, okay, to go ahead and just make those changes on our revised copies. So we have this document that I've been adding the stuff that we've all agreed in process to change. But then the next meeting, what we could do is come in with a list of stuff that we've changed. And if we think that there's anything that needs discussion after reading them ourselves, those would be the things that we talk about So if there's some stickier widgets or things, and if we all read all the things and we see stuff in there that people aren't changing, we think it should, that would be the opportunity to talk about those things as well, just to sort of jumpstart kind of the actual progress on making these revisions as well. What do people think about that?
Yeah, Catherine, thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I was confused, I guess, with the bill you sent, the like, I think you called it like the edited rural character, like the section, right? And I went to look at it to thinking I was doing what Charles was saying, like for tonight.
Right.
And so but there was nothing, maybe it's just that particular section. I don't know. There was no substantive, like, it looked the same. I couldn't see anything that was different. So I was like, I don't know if I missed something or if there's additional things that I need to go to the Google Doc to find
Right.
the stuff from the section, but like.
Yeah, so what you got was no different because I wasn't making changes to it. I gave you guys all exactly what was in the comp plan. And the idea was that each of us would take what was in the Google Doc and make those changes to it. So Val made some changes to one of the appendices based on what we had discussed at last meeting, and he sent that to all of us. But so my thought was that I gave that to the rural character to you, Catherine, the livability to Charles. I kept the other two parts. And as we decided as a group to make changes, that each of us would go and make those physical changes. Because sometimes it was like, oh, reword this. We didn't decide the actual words as a group. And
Right.
that was the idea. Now, what Charles is suggesting is to go ahead and between now and 2 weeks from now, act on the things that seem trivial.
Just do it. Yeah.
And just do it. And I'm fine with that. But you do keep track of what you've done because you at least mention, because what seems trivial to one person might not be to somebody else. So at least mention, here's the changes I made, roughly, and then we can, and here are the things I think we ought to talk about. So flag the ones that you think are bigger things that merit group discussion. Is that what you're suggesting, Charles? At least that's what I suggest.
That's what I'm suggesting. And just to be clear, that was my understanding, that you were just sending me a clean copy of the livability section for me to make all the livability based edits based on my knowledge of what's in the livability section and all the stuff that I did prior to it. So that was what I was expecting to do. I was just waiting to get all of the comments.
Right.
Like in one, and since this is, if it's going to take a whole nother hour and a half to 2 hours just to get through, the next 4, it's just, I would rather have more of this done. And each of us is probably well suited to read these things, the comments that we got, and make what seem to be substantive changes. And if we hit something that we're not sure about, come back next meeting and ask about it. But at the same time, as we read through these things, if there's things we're like, oh, this is a pretty sticky thing, we got to make sure this gets talked about. Have a separate list that like if the person doesn't address the things that you think are sticky, they also get brought up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you send the Google Doc like as just a separate email?
Well, he did send the link, but part of the problem, I had trouble finding it because send it with the subject link to Google Doc or something so it's clear, because it was like read Don Barber's comments or something, and I didn't realize you weren't, so anyway, he did send the link out, but it is there. But if you can send it out again, that
I will send it out again.
And glancing at what's left, other than Mark, I think there's not a lot to go through, I think, and what we have left.
And we can
luckily,
decide.
So that's the good news. So look through look through what's left, which is L through W, and I think and so I think we can enact on some of that stuff. One thing I did send some stuff on the introduction, some wording change suggestions from a reader who turns out to be my wife, but that doesn't necessarily mean I endorse everything. But it also doesn't mean that I disendorse everything. I think she has good thoughts. You should hear her go over my writing.
Nice neutral thing to say. I think thoughts.
You should. At any rate, never mind. We have fun sometimes.
Yeah, I like it.
Working on my writing. So that, because it's the intro and it's the first thing people read, I think it's worth looking at that, but also it's a group part more. I understand how the other sections are more individual. We all have our own little, take in them, but I'd like us to, as a group, look at that intro. So next meeting, that's what we'll do. Again, it's just a few word things here and there. And I do want to go through some stuff in Don's comments. Some of it I might just be able to write, but in particular, he makes some points about form of business restrictions based on further thinking he's done. And the main message right now, I just want to say, is that's an active area of research on the task force. And not necessarily in full agreement with Don's assessment, but it is an active area. So we're, I think, pretty safe to keep our comp plan as is, but I just want to update y'all on what's going on there. And we'll do that next meeting as well. So that's it. So should we do 2 weeks from now? Catherine, does that work out for you?
22nd.
Is that a yes? I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tim, any chance you can make it?
I don't have my phone with me. I left it in the other room. I'll check it out. If not, Mark, I'll send Mark. One of us will
Okay.
be there.
All right. And
5:30 still?
I guess that seems to be Val's best time. It works okay for me. That's fine.
But before we
And-
break, can I ask
Yes.
you guys just a practical question, whether now you're in a position to imagine the window in which you think it's likely that the document will be presented to the town board?
I mean, I can say I'm very motivated to have all of my edits done soon after this next meeting, if not before, if there's nothing substantive to come out of the next meeting. I don't know how other people feel.
I mean, I was kind of, I mean, my original thought was hoping we get through everything today, and then 2 weeks from now, we'd basically vote on the final plan, but that's not happening, obviously.
Well, how much more, let me ask, I don't know if this is even worthwhile, and I hesitate to even suggest this. And I know, Charles, you have to go, but does there need to be some sort of quorum? Can you and I just like hammer this out and be done? Because I'm happy to just stay and do it. I think
Right.
it just needs to be done. I mean, I don't know.
And we don't have quorum now, do we?
Well, we-
No,
well,
that's
we-
what I'm saying. I don't know.
Well, we do. With 3 of us, we have quorum.
3.
Okay.
Right? Because it's a 5-person board, we have quorum with 3. Honestly, I mean, some of it could be done. I mean, I know there are limits of how much you can do decision making, but I think that Charles's proposal isn't that off. I mean, again, I think if we look through these and incorporate things into our sections that seem like it, I'm happy to chat with you about them, Catherine. I have another maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes I could do.
I just sent around that document if you guys want to use it to log things. I changed the subject and everything.
I mean, only if it's helpful. I'm not saying that we
Yeah.
should like, sit around and chat about it just for fun, but like if
Right. No, exactly.
I mean, we're not voting on anything right now as it is.
Yeah.
So if you guys still feel motivated to keep plugging away, I'll just click that. I'll check that sheet, as I move into the rest of the comments. So
like next week, so I'm just saying like 2 weeks from now, if that's the 22nd, then the next
Right.
town board meetings aren't until the first week of November. So I guess it would be that then, Tim? I mean, like we would.
I think early November. What I can't tell for sure is that where you'd have it. Your agenda meeting must be when?
The agenda meeting is the 3rd of November.
Right. So it wouldn't probably be by then, but might be. And by the
On election
possibly
day?
by the
Gee, maybe we won't meet on election day. I don't know. I hope we're not meeting on election day.
Well, Tuesday the 3rd is
No, I
election.
bet
We're
we're
still
not
working
meeting.
on
I bet
election
I
day.
bet it's the Wednesday. I bet it's the
Yeah.
Wednesday.
I mean, my only debate is whether it might be that, we have to somehow meet, we're meeting a couple of weeks, and you have to like have all the pieces put back together again and agree, this is the final document. Yes, great. And part of that is, again, like the formatting stuff, which again, Charles, great, you don't have to be involved in, but the town board needs to get a formatted document because I know they're not going to do it. They're not going to format it themselves. So,
I mean, I would also take a hard look at really how much formatting is needed. I think that a plain text document goes a really long way, and it's also really accessible. And the more formatting you add, I'm just putting it out there.
I
Like,
know that was part of the question is how much do we do? Do we use columns or not? Do we add some more pictures or not? That is part of the discussion to be had that we haven't really finished yet. And so I would say definitely November, Tim. Probably the second week of November is hopefully the latest. What do you guys think?
yes,
Yeah.
I think we should try and get it done by November. That's
Like,
my.
we're getting into like year's end. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it's like we're really getting into like
we're getting into moratoriums and is my
Yeah,
concern.
right. I know that. So it's, you know, so I would say that that's what looks likely. And Tim, for you know, I would like to continue participating on the task force, and I will, but to a somewhat limited extent for the next couple of weeks. It looks like, because I'll be busy with this stuff. But I would
Well,
definitely like
this
to
is
get
more important, Bill.
involvement.
I mean, I think it's more important for you to spend your time on this right now. You know, there's plenty of people on the task force, so.
Yeah.
And I think it's good. But the reason that I'm asking is because once it gets to the town board, it'll be a few weeks before we'll be able to have a public hearing.
Right.
And I was hoping, I mean, it might not work. I mean, I'm not trying to pressure anybody, you know, just trying to think out loud and plan. Because if the task force then recommends any immediate actions, you know, which won't happen until the comprehensive plan is approved. I mean, no actions that are going to be recommended by the town board probably would happen. It's probably is going to take precedence in terms of the priorities, just because one thing props up another legally, frankly.
So yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we're in that time frame. It's close. I think on the table, I wouldn't want to take out the other possibility of extending the moratorium for another month or two.
Well,
if
that might
that's what
have
it
to
takes
happen, but
to get
yeah.
this through public hearing, you know, properly. Because I don't want to rush
Well,
that part of it either.
What's at the town board, that's just not your
Right.
not your problem. That's our problem. That becomes our problem. So
That's why, yeah. So, I mean, I think pushing us at least aiming for being ready for something sooner rather than later would be
thanks.
All right.
ideal.
So let's do this, Catherine. Let's not do it now, but can we each at least, again, it's not that many. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Will Lawrence has some detailed comments. Could we each just read those and create, if we think there's a few sticky things or things that merit discussion, so like make a list of that, and then that's what we'll talk about next time, rather than going through line by line those comments.
That's
I
good.
do feel better discussing them as a group because we all have different perspectives and things to add to it. But let's come up with a reduced set of things that really merit discussion.
Cool. All right, guys. Great talking with you.
Okay.
You got to roll.
All right.
Yeah.
See you. Thanks for having
All
me,
right,
Charles.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Great.
No problem.
I get to finish.
Catherine?